By show of hands, how many of you interact with other human beings on a daily basis? Just by show of hands, is that okay? Very good, very good. Most of you raised your hand. Okay, we'll talk about that afterwards. You need to know that preachers all over the world every week, when they prepare messages, are trying to prepare something that people need, right? That will impact them in their daily life. And so prepping this message, I was like, man, I hope they interact with human beings. And so you do, and so I'm excited about that. Now, I'm quite confident that the human beings you interact with don't all attend Mountain Lake Church. Is that a safe bet? That is just kind of nod? Okay, very good. I'm also going to assume that those human beings you interact with, some of them are Christians, some of them are not Christians, some of them are old or young, rich, poor, educated, uneducated, married, divorced, single, want to get married, don't want to get married, they live in a condo, they live in a house, they live in an apartment. You interact with human beings of all different ages, stages, races, cultures, and faiths. And we're going to talk about human being interactions today. And we're in the middle of this series called Asking for a Friend. And it's a great series because you can ask all these difficult questions for a friend and they don't apply to you. So this whole sermon series is applying to your friends, never to you. So you guys are perfect, but everything we're talking about is for your friends that aren't perfect. So my guess is you've got a friend that you go, you know what? They interact with human beings, and they've been doing it for so long, they've gotten into a rut or a certain way of doing things, and they become a bit jaded and cold towards certain human beings. Like they just do their own thing, and whether they mean to or not, they put blinders on and go, you know what? I go to school, I go to work, I shop, I go on vacation, and I just live life this way. And your friend forgets that there's a whole wide world of human beings out there that may be different from them, that may go to church, that may not go to church, and the interactions with them may be less than great at some time. And so today we're talking about interactions with human beings, whether you work with them or go to school with them or you just run into them on the street. And we're going to look at a very, very famous story that Jesus tells to demonstrate what a great human being, how it interacts with other human beings. But the reason Jesus is telling this story is because he's being set up by a guy. A guy who stood up and said, hey, Jesus, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus goes, what does the law of Moses say? The guy goes, well, you got to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus goes, you got it, that's it. And he goes, oh, real quick question. He goes, who is my neighbor? And Jesus answers his question with a story, but doesn't say who a neighbor is. He describes how a neighbor acts with other human beings. If you got a Bible, go ahead and grab and go to Luke chapter 10. And while you're turning there, you've heard this story, you know this story, whether you've grown up in church or not. And it's the parable of the Good Samaritan. Now, Friday afternoon, kids were out of school. It was the weekend. We wanted to get the party started and go crazy nuts, so we went to Chick-fil-A. Yep. We just loaded up, we piled in, we went there and went to Chick-fil-A, went through the drive-thru, get all the stuff, order, and we're driving back home. And I don't know, somehow God uses waffle fries to speak to my kids. I'm not sure how that works, but whenever we go to Chick-fil-A, they seem to have like spiritual questions. And so David, my second born, he's back there, he goes, hey, Dad, quick question. I go, yeah. He goes, who's preaching this weekend? I was like, does that really matter? Like, are you going to show up or not show up? He's like, no, I like Nathan. He likes Nathan a lot. I was like, oh, he's good. I was like, no, it's me. He's like, oh, okay. He goes, what are you preaching on? I go, I'm preaching on the Good Samaritan. And Daniel, my oldest, he goes, oh, you mean the Great Samaritan, Dad? And I was like, I don't know. Hey, good. Why do you call him great? He goes, well, I mean, Dad, he seems like a pretty great guy, so I think he's the Great Samaritan. And so whether you call him the Good Samaritan, whether you call him the Great Samaritan, you need to know this. He wasn't called anything like that in Scripture. We've always called it the Good Samaritan story, and you're going to understand why we call him good, but in Scripture, when Jesus is telling the story, he never once refers to him as the Good Samaritan. Luke chapter 10, we're going to start in verse 30, and here's how the story unfolds. Jesus replied with a story. A Jewish man was traveling on a trip from Jerusalem to Jericho. He was attacked by bandits. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him up, and left him half dead beside the road. Now, when Jesus is telling this story, his listeners would know what road he's talking about. This road from Jerusalem to Jericho is about a 17, 18-mile road, and it would be referred to as the way of blood. The way of blood. And the reason why is because bandits and robbers were known to attack people traveling by themselves. And so they usually travel in caravans down this road. And so it's the way of blood. And so they would understand what happens. And so this man is attacked, beaten to within an inch of his life, left there to die beside the road, and some individuals walk by. Look at verse 31. By chance, a priest came along. When he saw the man lying there, he crossed to the other side of the road and passed him by. A temple assistant walked over and looked at him lying there, but he also passed by on the other side of the road. Now, just get this picture in your head. There's a priest and a temple assistant. Man's there lying half dead on the side of the road. Priest walks by. He sees him, but he doesn't even go over there to him. He just continues on walking. Temple assistant sees him. He actually walks over to the guy. It's kind of messy. It's kind of bloody. It's a bit more involved than he wants to. And so he continues walking on down the road to whatever he's going to do. Here's a man lying half dead beside the road, helpless and hopeless, needing another human being's help. Now, the odds of you walking down a street called the Way of Blood, getting attacked by robbers and left there beside the road for dead, the odds are quite low. Would you agree with that? Yeah, unless you live off the Way of Blood. I don't know where your street name is. All right. But the odds of you needing another human being's help sometime this week, they're quite high. We can't live life isolated. We need other human beings to help us. And so we've all found ourselves in helpless, hopeless situations. Maybe you're out about shopping and you've got kids and they're kind of going crazy and you're trying to get kids and you're trying to carry groceries and it's just one of those chaotic situations and you just need somebody's help. Or maybe you're at the office and you're late to a meeting as is. You've got a stack of papers. You trip. The papers go everywhere. And everyone's running to this meeting because the boss is calling. And you're there trying to get papers. You're going to be late. They're all out of order. You need someone's help. You're brand new at school this year. It's a large school. You came from a really small school. The tardy bell's about to ring. You're lost. You've got books everywhere. You don't know what you need another human being's help. Place that I find myself in often needing another human being's help is whenever I go to Home Depot and try to buy a 4x8 sheet of plywood. If you've ever bought that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Let me tell you this process. And getting it on the orange cart, no big deal at all, right? That just slides right off, slides in there. Getting it checked out, paid for, no big deal. Wheeling it to your truck, no problem. The problem comes when you're by yourself and you've got to get a 4x8 sheet of plywood in the back of your truck and the wind starts blowing. As soon as you lift that up, it becomes a sail and you're like Mary Poppins flying through the Home Depot parking lot. And I've had both extremes, and I kid you not, both extremes. One extreme where people are going into the store, they see me and cross to the other side of the parking lot. And I'm going, I know you see me. Like, I've got a 4x8 sheet of plywood. I mean, I know you see me. But then I've had the other extreme, and you have too, where another human being offers help. I've had other people come over here, let me help you, and they'll load the 2 or 3 sheets of plywood. And it's just this moment where as a human being, I'm hopeless and I'm helpless, and somebody shows up and helps versus somebody shows up, sees the issue, and walks on by. The first 2 men see the issue but walk on by, but look what happens with the third one. Verse 33. It says, then a despised Samaritan came along, and when he saw the man, he felt compassion for him. Going over to him, the Samaritan soothed his wounds with olive oil and wine and bandaged them. Then he put the man on his own donkey and took him to an inn where he took care of him. The next day, he handed the innkeeper 2 silver coins, telling him, take care of this man, and if this bill runs higher than this, I'll pay you next time I'm here. And so what makes the Good Samaritan so good? What you need to understand is we look at the story and we look at the Good Samaritan and go, oh man, we should be like him. But let me pose a different thought to you. I think all 3 men in this story, the priest, the temple assistant, and the Samaritan, all 3 of them are better than you and I are today. Now, some of you get offended. You go, what? No, not the Samaritan, but the priest and the temple assistant, all 3 men did something that you and I think, often fail to do today. All 3 men at least saw the man lying there. I think the culture you and I live in, the pace of life that we live, it is very difficult for us to see the needs around us. That's why the blinders get put on. The faster we go, our peripheral vision narrows. We push, we drive, we go, we return emails, we make money, we hustle, 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 hustle. There's needs all around us. We don't ever see them because we're pushing on to the next thing. Both the priests and the temple, at least they saw the man lying there. And here's what I want you to grasp from this idea. Don't get so focused on the task ahead of you that you miss the needs all around you. Don't get so focused on the task ahead of you that you miss the need all around you, right in front of you, that need right then and there. Maybe it's that neighborhood kid that always comes over. Every day after school, they always come over. But this one day they come over, they're a little bit different. They're a little bit quieter. Maybe you can tell they've been crying. And there's a need, but you're so busy, you just kind of excuse it out of the way. Maybe there's that person you sit next to at the cubicle all the time or the same desk at school all the time, and all of a sudden something's a little off. They're a little bit shorter or snippier, a little bit more angry or a little bit quieter. Something is going on, or maybe you notice the wedding ring that they always wear is not there, and instead you just kind of keep on going past. Or maybe it's your own child. Maybe it's your own child. As soon as you come home from work, they run up to you, they grab your leg, they're ready to play. You've got 100 emails to return, phone calls, you're just going, not now. Don't get so focused on the task ahead of you, on what you're driving toward, that you miss the needs all around you. Now, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands because I don't want to make you feel bad, but I'm just going to ask that you would kind of give me a nod or a grunt or an affirmative something. If you're 16 or older, how many of you have ever been guilty of texting and driving? If you have, just go, they have? Okay, good. All right, I'm going to tell you. Texting and driving, we all know is bad. Don't do it. However, I read this week, and I'm not making this up, I read this week that injuries that are on the rise, are texting and walking. Texting and walking. Because what is happening is we get so fixated on our phones that we walk, and people walk right out onto the road as the car is coming, or they'll walk right into a light post. They get so fixated on their email or text or whatever it is that they go. Now, if I had come to you 15 years ago and said, hey, listen, it's a busy sidewalk and a busy road and you're walking, how would you like to read a book while you're doing that? You'd go, I'm not an idiot. No, of course you're not. But I'll give you a phone or a text message. Have you ever landed on a plane, they landed, and the lady comes on, she goes, you can now take your phones off of airplane mode. I mean, it's like people hadn't breathed for 4 hours, like, oh my goodness. I mean, you've seen it. Right, whether it's phone or whatever, but we get so focused on one thing that we're going, and we'll step over whatever, so focused on the task ahead of us that we miss the needs around us. And there's a whole world that you and I interact with on a daily basis. It's the cashier who's there when you kind of go, hey, how's it going? And they pause, and maybe they get a quiver in their lip, and they'll go, fine. And you can tell they're trying to power through it, and you just go, great, give me my groceries, and you move on. It's that when you're getting your oil changed, and that you see that person, they're changing, something's different, but we're so focused and fixated on where we're going that we miss the needs around us. All three men, why they are often better than you and I today is because at least they saw the needs around them. Don't get so focused on where you're going, on where you're driving, and what you're pushing toward that you miss the human beings that are crying out for help, that are there on the side of the road all around you. I want you to go back. They all three saw, but here's where the Samaritan takes a different turn. Look at verse 33. It says, then a despised Samaritan came along. It says, when he saw the man, it says, he felt compassion for him. He felt compassion for him. He saw him. They all three saw him, but only one of them actually felt something for him. Actually allowed his heart to break for him. And here's what I want you to grasp is simply this, to allow your heart to break for the right things. Allow your heart to be broken, to be impacted for the right things. Because here's what I'm very confident of, that there are men and women here in this room that you push and you drive and you negotiate and you grow great companies and great businesses. And it's easy to allow emotions. Those aren't that important because I'm pushing and I'm driving. And your heart hasn't broken for someone or something in a long, long time. Now, some of you, your heart will break for anything. You watch a cat video on YouTube, you're going, oh my goodness. You get that. But those of you, or maybe your upbringing, you've had an awful, awful upbringing, and a great defense mechanism that you've learned is just going, I'll let my heart be hardened and cold and jaded, and I just won't deal with it. And so you see the needs. You see the kids or the students, or you see the coworkers or the random person on the street or the cashier at the grocery store. You see the people, but your heart is so cold and hardened for whatever reason that you've yet to ever let it be broken for someone or something in a long, long time. So when was the last time that you felt compassion or sympathy for another human being? That you put yourself in their shoes, right? Or you looked at it from their perspective. Or you simply asked them, what is this like? What does this make you feel? When was the last time you felt emotions for another human being? Because what happens is we allow our hearts to get colder and colder and colder, and all of a sudden there's no room for any emotions to be there. And instead of living life with emotions, we just live life and go through the motions. We go through the motions of marriage rather than feeling the emotions of marriage. We go through the motions of life rather than feeling emotions from another human beings. How many of you, when you went to college, you got a mini fridge for your dorm or for your apartment, a mini fridge, okay? You kept sodas in there? Okay. You guys got that joke. 9:30 was like, what are you talking about? So, okay, I know who you guys are. All right, that's why you're at 11. Okay. You took a kid to college maybe this past month. You bought a mini fridge. Now, mini fridges may have changed, but back in college, they had mini fridge, and then did your mini fridge have this like teeny tiny freezer? You know what I'm talking about? You could put like one popsicle in there, okay? And the mini fridge I had, like when you just left it go in, that freezer would get more and more ice built up around it, and it would get smaller and smaller and smaller. You could fit like maybe a stick of gum, like frozen in there if you wanted it. And I tell you that because I think our hearts do become the same way. It gets colder and colder and colder. It's just you put up more guards, become more jaded and more bitter and more cynical. You watch the news, you read Facebook, and you're just going, I don't want to deal with it. And it becomes colder and colder, and all of a sudden your heart has no room for emotions or for sympathy or for compassion for another human being. Allow your heart to be broken for the right things in life. And then look at what happens as the Samaritan finishes it up, because he does something unbelievable here to him. Verse 34. It says, going over to him, the Samaritan soothed his wounds with olive oil and wine and bandaged them. Now, he could have stopped right there. Saw the need, felt compassion, soothed his wounds. That would have been great. That's good. But he goes another step. It says, then he put the man on his own donkey and took him to an inn where he took care of him. That's step 2. Man, he not only bandaged his wounds, put him on the donkey, take him to the hotel, puts him up the hand, put it in, says, you got it, good, we'll take care of you. Next day, we're good. But he goes one step further. Look at verse 35. The next day, he handed the innkeeper 2 silver coins, telling him, take care of this man. If his bill runs higher than this, I'll pay you next time I'm here. He doesn't just go the extra mile, he goes the extra mile. He is not just aware of the situation. He doesn't just see the man. He doesn't just let his heart break for him. He actually does something about what he's seen, about what he's felt. He actually takes action on the need in front of him and what his heart is feeling. He does something about it. And here's what I want you to grasp from this idea is simply this, is that awareness is good, but action is better. Awareness is good, but action is better. All 3 men were aware. Like all 3 men were aware of the guy laying on the ground. All 3 men of them knew what was going on. But the reason the Good Samaritan is the Good Samaritan is because he actually did something about it. It's easy to become aware, but I think we often stop there. And we want to make sure other people are aware. As long as we make sure other people are aware, we think we've done our job. Are you aware of what's going on at the office? Yeah, okay, I just want to make sure you're aware. Are you aware of what's going on at school? Yeah, okay, I just want to make sure you're aware. There's a certain need, there's a certain need. I posted on Facebook, I'm good. I let my people know. And we become aware, and awareness is a really good thing. But if it just stops there, then we're like the other 2 men. The other 2 men were aware. They knew the need. I mean, they saw it, they were aware of it. The awareness is good, but action, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's what Jesus is calling us to going, yes, it's good to be aware. Yes, it's good to see them. Yes, take your blinders off, but it doesn't just stop there. Allow your heart to break for it and then do something about it. Awareness is good, but no change happens unless you do something about it. Whenever I travel, I have this habit that Brianna loves, and that I leave my suitcase on the ground. That's it. And so I travel this week, leave my suitcase on the ground, open it up, and just leave my clothes in there, because I think most men in this room would agree with me that there's a secret code about which clothes are dirty and which clothes are really dirty. Okay, most men do that. Okay, so if they're like really, really dirty, I know they go in their hamper, but sometimes if they're folded over, like I can wear a pair of jeans for another day. You know, I smell the shirt. It's not that bad, so I kind of have this little system. Brianna, you know, she would prefer the suitcase to be gone. So I am aware, even as of this morning, before I came to church this morning, I'm aware that suitcase is there. I'm certainly aware of it. I even went over this morning, looked at it, and then stepped over it. Well, I mean, awareness is good, but awareness does nothing. Awareness doesn't change the fact that the suitcase is still there. Awareness doesn't change the fact that the dirty clothes still need to go in the hamper. Awareness is good. I'm aware of it. Brianna is certainly aware of it, but awareness does nothing. It's only when I begin to take action, to put the dirty clothes in the hamper, put the clean clothes up on the hanger, and take the suitcase, put it away in the closet, does something change. Just because you're aware doesn't mean that person's life or situation does anything. Just because you're aware of the neighborhood kid or the grocery store cashier or the person next to your business, just because you're aware doesn't mean their life changes. It begins to change when you begin to do something about it. So you and I are reading this. If Jesus had stopped before everything else and just said, you know, he soothed his wounds and bandaged them, period, and changed the story, we'd have gone, oh my goodness, that's fantastic. He saw it. He felt compassion for it, and he took care of his own. That's Samaritan. He is the Good Samaritan. But Jesus expands on it and goes, no. He then takes him to the hotel and takes care of him. And then the next day, he tells the innkeeper, you take care of him as long as it is, and then if it costs more, I'll take care of it. And so here's a question that bothered me this week, and I hope it bothers you today too. But if you've seen the need, the person in your life, in your heart, you go, you know what, I know something needs to be done. Then here's the question, not what can you do about it, but what does the extra mile look like? Well, you know, I need to do something about it. Yeah, doing something, that's great. But what does the extra mile, maybe even further, what does the extra mile look like? Well, I know I need to take care of that. Yeah, but what could you do to make their life even better? Oh, I know I need to write a check. Yes, you need to write a check, but what could you do to make their life even better? What is that extra mile for that person, that need that is put in your life? Well, all I could do is do this and everything would be fixed. You most certainly could. But how much better would the extra mile be in their life? How great of an impact could you make in their life and in their marriage and in their world and their finances if not only you did what you knew you needed to do, but you went the extra mile? Yesterday, I was shown the extra mile. I had asked for something was sent, and I was blown away by it. Now, I'm assuming that you husbands in the room, you have been sent a list via text message from your wife. Is that correct? Yes? Okay, good. Shopping list, grocery list, whatever. Brianna goes, I need to get some things from the store. I go, you know what? I'm going to be out. I'll get it. Just send me a list. She goes, oh, okay. So she begins to send me a list. Now, Brianna, when she goes to the grocery store, she's a trained professional. I'm an amateur, all right? So when I go to the store, I just kind of wander around aimlessly. Like I'll start over here, and then, you know, I'm like a little cat, and I'll go over here to this thing, and I'll buy some things. And I wind up with just a bunch of random junk that we don't need. So she sends me a list. Now, sending me the list was all she had to do, but she went the extra mile. And let me just show you this list that she texted me yesterday. Go ahead and put that up there. Now, grocery list. Start at the left side of the store, closest to the pharmacy. And work your way to the right. And I put it in order. Plastic cups, plastic bowls, silverware, disposable toilet brush, Tide, Pure Clean, milk cream, almond milk, chocolate chips, dark and milk, pecans. She was here a few weeks ago when I talked about my frozen pecans, chocolate chips. And G-free bread. That's code for gluten-free bread. Now, Kroger brand in bread section, top shelf by specialty breads. And bananas. So she sends me this, and I was like, thanks. I'm reading, I'm going, why'd you send me this? And I kid you, she goes, because I know you wander around aimlessly. And I was like, I actually do. You're probably wondering, was it really in order? It was. Like I was like, I just want to prove her wrong. And so I got all the way to the end. I got the bananas and I could not find the gluten-free bread. And I was like, man, I don't know where this thing, she got this. I called her, I was like, where's the gluten-free bread? It's the aisle before the bananas. I was like, oh, you were right. So, but I tell you that because here's the list. One thing, it's the extra mile. What would it look like in your life if not only you just did something, but man, you went the extra mile, and how different could their life be? And then Jesus poses a question back to the guy that asked originally, verse 36. He says, now, which of these three would you say was a neighbor to the man who was attacked by the bandits? Jesus asked. Then the man replied, the one who, what? Showed him mercy. Then Jesus said, yes, now go and do the same. Now, we look at this story from the priest, the temple assistant, and the Good Samaritan. We look at their perspective. Oh, be the Good Samaritan. But there's a fourth perspective. There was the man who was half dead beside the road who saw the whole thing unfold. From his perspective, he saw the priest, then he saw the temple assistant, and he saw the Good Samaritan. And don't you know that his world was forever changed, not by what the priest saw, not by what the temple assistant saw, but by what the Samaritan did. Now, I'm going to tell you something here today, and I hate to burst your bubble here today, but I feel I owe it to you. If you know me, I'm a pretty straight shooter, logical guy. So I'm going to tell you something that my guess is you've never heard a preacher tell you this before, but welcome to Mountain Lake Church. So here's the truth. You and I will probably never change the world. I mean, we're all a great group of people. I mean, I look at you, you all look pretty awesome, but the truth of the matter is, you and I, we're probably not going to do that. You're going, what? How can that be? And I know you're going, I want to change the world. People go, I want to change the world. Yeah, maybe. Probably not. So you and I probably aren't going to change the world, but don't miss this. Don't miss this. But you and I, we can change someone's world. We're not going to go out and change the world, but we can change the next door neighbor kid's world. We can't change our spouse's world. We can't change our coworker's world. We can't change that random stranger at the grocery store's world. No, we're not going to go out and just books are going to be written about us and history books are going to tell our story, but we can change someone's world. Because don't you know the guy that was laying half dead beside the road, don't you know that his world was forever changed? Not by what the guy saw, but by what the Samaritan did. And how different would your workplace be? Would your community be? Would your neighborhood be? Would your school be? If you begin to open your eyes and say, Lord, open my eyes and give me ears to see and hear what you want me to. And God, give me wisdom and courage to do what you want me to do, to change someone's world. I'll tell you a pretty bold prayer to pray this week. It would be, Lord, bring somebody in my life whose world I can change. Bring somebody in my life, maybe that we even wouldn't expect, whose world that I can change, that I can do something that will forever change their world or their life or their outlook or their perspective. Because, Lord, I agree with Chris. I'm probably not going to change the world, but man, Lord, I can change someone's world. If you go through this story, we get this as Jesus followers, but even if you're here today and you're not a Christian, you're not a Jesus follower, you would have to agree that if the world operated off of these principles, it would be a much better place. Like you can think how different our culture would be. If you can think how different our cities and our communities and our schools and our businesses would be. That if people just stopped and looked around for the needs and the people that are needy in front of them, and their heart actually broke for the right things, and they weren't just aware about them, they actually did something about them, how different our world would be. I'll finish with two quotes, one by Mother Teresa, one by Jesus. Mother Teresa said this. She said, being unwanted, unloved, uncared for, forgotten by everybody, I think that is a much greater hunger, a much greater poverty than the person who has nothing to eat. Being forgotten about, unwanted, unloved, and that's way worse than going without food. And here's what Jesus said. He said, by this, all men will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. By this, the world will know, human beings will know, whether they go to church or not, whether they're at your work or at your school, they will know that you are my disciples by the way you love one another. And that word love is the word agape, which means a sacrificial love, which means opening your eyes and your ears and having a heart that feels for individuals, that has compassion, and actually doing something about it. He goes, that's how the world will know that you are my disciples. Not by what you see, not by just what you feel, but how you show love to one another. And how different would our community be if we, the people of God, begin to act like that? If we begin to live our lives and say, you know what? Yes, I'm driving hard and I'm pushing as fast as I possibly can, but God, give me the blinders, take the blinders off, Lord, and give me eyes to see the needs around me. God, give me a heart that breaks for them, compassion, sympathy for them. God, give me the courage and wisdom to do something about it. Because that is the way the world, that's the way human beings will know that we're your disciples, Jesus, because of the way we love one another. Let me pray for us. Father, my prayer for all of us is that this week, Lord, that you would place somebody in our life whose world we can change, whose world we can impact. Whether it's a family member or a friend or a random stranger. God, that you would give us eyes and ears to see the needs around us. You would give us a heart that breaks for the right things for people. God, you would give us the wisdom and the discipline to do something about it, to take action and to not change the world, but to change someone's world. Father, I pray for people here in this room that you would bring people into our lives, the difference that we can make. Give us eyes to see what you want us to and ears to hear what you want us to. Jesus, we love you and ask these things in your name. Amen. I love you all more than you will ever know. God bless you guys. Have a great Sunday afternoon.